Shalom Chaverim, today Parashat Bamidbar, and we're going to do it with the help of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And with his really one of the most famous works in political thought, The Social Contract. And today I actually want to start, before we even get to the Parashah, I want to start with the social contract and kind of talk about one of the main ideas here. So Rousseau, who was an 18th century philosopher, he was really considered one of the greatest philosophers of the Enlightenment, and he's also one of the biggest influences on the French Revolution, and as we all know, an event that changed political thought from that moment on. And let me dive in right away, and I'm going to read from the very beginning of the book, literally chapter 1, the very beginning, and it says, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Many a one believes himself the master of others, and yet he is a greater slave than they. How has this change come about? I do not know. What can render it legitimate? I believe that I can settle this question." So I'm sure some of you are thinking to yourself, oh, that was Rousseau, because yes, it's one of the most quoted opening lines of any political philosophy books. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. And the opening of The Social Contract is actually misleading. Because if you thought that this is going to be a book about how can human beings free themselves from societal chains, actually this entire book is about how can we live within them. And this is very important. So to really understand the concept, let's actually work backwards from the French Revolution and examine it in Rousseauian eyes. So what are the three pillars of the French Revolution, right? We have liberté, égalité, fraternité, right? Which is liberty, equality, and fraternity. And so according to Rousseau, the way to achieve those is, the first thing that has to happen is to achieve equality. That only equality can lead to freedom, to liberty. And only once that freedom is achieved, then fraternity can be developed. And let me unpack it a little bit. So according to Rousseau, first of all, we have to break hierarchical structures in society. And we have to consider that while there are individuals, they have an equal right to express their will and their goal. And they have equal, what was a very Enlightenment thing, natural rights. And then once that their goals are being considered equally, then freedom can be achieved. And when that freedom is achieved, only then people can look at one another and actually see in one another not enemies but friends, which is the meaning of fraternity. And actually, according to Rousseau, it's not developing fraternity, is returning to fraternity, basically to the initial state of nature of humankind, which is positive, which is rooted in fraternity. And the reason why we see each other as competitors or as enemies, these are social and economical indoctrinations that distorted our state of nature, which was initially collective. So how does Rousseau propose to achieve that equality? So he offers a tool, a very powerful tool that he calls la volonté générale, which means the general will. And he actually differentiates the general will from another concept, which he calls la volonté de tous, which means the will of all. Okay, and I want to read to you from the actual book how he put the difference between the two terms. So, okay. So he says, there is often a great deal of difference between the will of all and the general will. The latter regards only the common interests, while the former has regard to private interests and is merely a sum of particular wills. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that the will of all is basically you have many private interests that can come to be a majority. For example, there are many inside a group of people. There are many people who do not want to pay taxes anymore, and maybe they are the majority, right? So the will of all, the will of the majority, they do not want to pay taxes because of private interests. So that may be what will be implemented, but the weakest people in that given group will be harmed. The general will is different. The general will is a proposal which is agreed by all as it reason to benefit all. So basically, it acknowledges that there are different interests, but it wishes to compromise them by finding a common ground. And that common ground is the social contract. Okay, so now I'm going to pause with Rousseau, and we're going to go to Bamidbar. So Bamidbar really opens with really kind of like housekeeping lists and setups of, okay, now the Israelites are Bamidbar, which means in the desert. Let's first count them, have a census of all the, for example, the able bodies that can fight. And let's really draw a map of when they camp, how they camp, according to tribes. And it goes down to the details on each tribe was camping in a certain direction, and each tribe had a banner and a flag, had symbols, and it really goes into the details of the names of the tribe leaders and really detailed numbers of the census that is taking place. And throughout all this setup, the tabernacle stands in the center of it all. Okay, so here is a quote from our portion. It says, איש על דגלו באותות לבית אבותם יחנו בני ישראל מנגד סביב לאוהל מועד יחנו. Which means the Israelites shall camp, each man with his standard under the banners of their ancestral house. They shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. All right. So to connect this to Rousseau, I'm going to use the help of Aben Ish Chai. Aben Ish Chai is actually Rabbi Yosef Chaim from Baghdad, and his Torah commentary is called Aderet Eliyahu. And he is a master Kabbalist, and he's going to unpack this verse. So he says, והנה יש לתת טעם שנכתבו אותיות האבות על הדגלים, לתת כמה טעמים לזה. אותיות האבות הנזכרים לאל, הם י"ג האותיות כמספר אחד, לרמוז שכל ישראל צריכים לתפוס מידת האחדות ולהיות כולם כאיש אחד. Okay, so what he's saying here is actually really cool, and I'll explain it. So when we look at the banners, the letters on the banners were basically arranged according to the letters in the names of our three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay, so you have, bear with me in Hebrew, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So one flag had the first letters. Okay, so Aleph, Yud, Yud. Aleph for Avraham, Yud for Yitzchak, Yud for Yaakov. So Aleph, Yud, Yud was the first flag. Then the second flag would be the second letters. So it would be Bet, Tzadi, Ayin for the second letters of the name. But the important thing is that the number of letters in the three names, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, is 13. And 13, which is and 13 also is the numerical value of the word echad, which means one. Okay, so echad is Aleph is 4, Chet is 8, and Aleph is 1, Chet is 8, and Dalet is 4. So together it's 13 and it's echad. Okay? So again, there are 13 letters in our patriarch names. If you put them together, it makes the word one, echad. So what is Ben Ish Chai learns from this? That those letters on the flags were meant to say, we are all one. So what is our portion tells us? It tells us that, first of all, individuality, like in Rousseau's proposal, has been considered greatly because we name people by name. We have flags, we have symbols, we consider the differences between people, we consider the differences between the tribe, we consider the individuality. And actually those letters and those flags were symbolizing the blessings that the sons of Jacob received before he died. So it's really even taps into their personality. So the individuality is considered. But they are all arranged around a common ground, around something that is mutual, something that would equalize them, that would compromise all of those individual interests. And that's what also Ben Ish Chai says, that the purpose of acknowledging that individuality was to reach one, was to reach that echad. And why do I think it's important? Because a lot happened in political philosophy since Rousseau. And if we learned one thing, is that basically easier said than done, right? That common ground is very, very hard to achieve. And we had many ideas to try and achieve that common ground. One that comes to mind was, we talked about weeks ago, was the John Rawls with the veil of ignorance, right? What is the best way to achieve that common ground? So perhaps what our portion tells us is that what we need is what is the missing piece in Rousseau's theory stood in the middle of that camp. That maybe our only chance at a general will is by adhering to something that is external to us. Something that leaves us undoubtedly equal. Because after all, the social contract can be just another way of saying covenant. Shabbat shalom.